Stephen, you spoke earlier about the regulator coming in and you being found non-compliant. This is just a little bit in terms of around what could that process look like? I know it's very hard to put value on it, etc. But what might that look like if you get the PRA or the FCA rock up at your door and want to investigate you against some of the new legislation? What happens?
Well, earlier on we talked about the personal liability as the SMF, either for the framework or not overseeing our own individual suppliers, vendors, or outsourcers. This is more at the sort of firm level. I mean, the headlines that people often focus on is the sort of regulatory fines that can be issued, and they've got some numbers up there. And post financial crisis, the numbers are even bigger. So the numbers have come down, but these things do ebb and flow. So perhaps they're now on the way back up. So the headline number is one thing, and that's across the industry, of course, the numbers that are there. But the reality is, and you've got a sort of picture there of an iceberg, the regulatory fines is the tip of the iceberg. Firstly, there's this sort of brand and reputational damage as a result of the fine, which is often, if not always, made public. As a result of the fine, there's always some sort of remediation that needs to be done. And that there's a number of sort of components to that. Number one is, often external consultants are required to come in. I'm one of them. I love it when these things happen because it means I print some revenue. So by all means, carry on as you are, but I don't recommend it. So there's the consultant fees that come in, and they can rack up pretty quickly. Go to some of the big four consulting firms, and they'll put in teams of people down, and it's amazing. Once you've got a bunch of consultants in, they start finding other things as well. So you end up not just remediating that, but remediating other things. That's perhaps not such a bad thing, but you get my point. It's the consultant fees which can rack up very quickly. Even that, though, I mean, there's a number you can put on that. 100 grand with KPMG for a 2-month piece of work. Fine, it's 100 grand. The reality is, it's also the internal management time, and not just even management, the disruption to your day to day and lost revenue. Other projects get sort of deprioritized and such like. So the unquantifiable cost of remediating this stuff is significantly more than the fine. It's significantly more than the consulting costs. It's all the internal resource that needs to be reprioritized and redirected onto whatever remediation it is you've got to deal with. And then lastly, if the regulators really get upset with you, I mean, they can put caps on how much volume, how much business you do, or even in certain extreme situations, loss of license and striking you off. So, there's, as I say, there's a whole host of other things there above and beyond the fine. And if you do go into this saying, well, I'll take a risk-based approach and I'll respond when I have to, firstly, I wouldn't recommend that either as an SMF. But just bear in mind, if you do go into that as a sort of risk-reward type analysis, don't just focus on the potential regulatory sanction. The risk is significantly greater than that.
To keep up with the latest vendor ops news, subscribe here and follow us on LinkedIn. Links in the description below.